Some quick hints on debugging your Android app. If you're having trouble compiling it, a couple things. First, be patient. Watch if there's a Gradle sync or build still going. Watch it down here and let that complete. That often fixes errors. If there are still problems, you can go up to Build and do Clean Project, and then Build, and then Rebuild Project, and that will rerun the Gradle thing. So wait and watch for that to get done and see if that helps. There are sometimes problems with the manifest file up here with permissions, but that's not as common these days. More often we see problems with the Gradle file. If you look at the module level Gradle file here, you should have your dependencies and stuff in here, and there's often problems with the level of dependencies in here. Sometimes it's easier just to find a working project you have on your computer and compare that with this version. If they're incompatible versions, so like if this is a version 0 of Firebase and this is version 2, they will. And also when you change these, you want to make sure you resync things. Now when you're running your project, you might get a crash. So let's run this in emulator. So if it comes up and crashes, you can get information about that. Sometimes you do have to look. If you're in this window, the run window, it often doesn't show what's going on. You have to switch to the Android monitor window. And then there you should be able to see what the issue was. So if you don't see, if you switch to Android monitor and it's blank, you can close the project, open it up, and that should reset the monitor. But normally when you get an error, your program crashes here, you'll get what is called a stack trace. Over here, a list of methods that are called, and it should be all in errors, in red. Let me make this a little bigger so we can see. And so just go up. This is Android calling different methods inside Android, and then the ones in blue will be the ones in your program. So just scroll up till you get to one, and then you can click on that, and that'll tell you where the error is that's crashed. Now there might be a warning or some method just above this. Attempt to invoke a method. Let's see, on a null object reference. And it's also up here at the very top. If it's not there, it'll be repeated up here at the top. So scan that error, especially the end of that error should tell you where. So here we're talking about null object reference. So this object is null. It means we haven't initialized it up here, so I can change that, initialize it. So at least that'll point you to where the error is in this project. The next thing that you can use sometimes is these log statements in your activities. You might be putting in log activities. Often I put, so this one thing is just the kind of tag that we put in here, and this is whatever we want, whatever string we want is kind of the log. There are different levels. D is debugging. That's a good one to put in when you're debugging. These will these will be removed when you switch to production version, so you don't have to edit them out later if you don't want. It's also, a lot of people will put, like, I'm in the main activity, your tag might be main here. Now when you're down here, again, you switch to Android monitor. You should be in the logcat area here, and you'll see these messages coming up and being displayed. Sometimes it's hard to find your log messages among all these other log messages here like this, so you can do some filtering here. So if you have a certain tag, you can put that in and it'll limit those messages to only that tag. So log messages are helpful, but probably a better way to handle some harder to find errors is to use actual breakpoints and walking through your code. So if your code is crashing right away, or you want to walk through from the very start, you can just go to the main activity, go to onCreate. Now on the left side here, if you click, you can set a red breakpoint there. So I'm going to set the breakpoint right up here and run it. Now this time I'm going to run it not in this mode, but I'm going to run it in debug mode. That'll put a little more debugging and will catch these breakpoints. I'm going to run this. And this works either with an emulator or with a physical device. Now the application will run. Here you'll see this waiting for debugger that has to set up a little bit of communication back and forth. So then it should come to this breakpoint and bring up this debugging window to help you walk through your code. It shows where you are in your code, what methods have been called, kind of what's called your call stack here. And then you can step through your code using this. This will step over this line, so again, I don't want to see what this code line does. I just use this. So we just use this to step over each line. Now if I want to go into this method, this is a method I declared, and see what walk through that, I can. If I step over it, it will just step over it like this. If I hit this one to step into, it'll go into that method. So here's my set list method, and I can step through that and see it work. And then I'll come back here. So I can either step over, or if it's a method I want, I can step into it. So I can just go through these lines and see what's going on. And then I can also, it should be watching, setting up my variables here and showing them, like here, mauth is null right now. After I execute that line, it'll be set up to a variable, initialized to an object. So I can watch those variables as I go. You can also add watches. That there are certain variables you want to watch, you can add a watch over here and see that, but I often just find it very useful just to see what variables are set up and are running as we go. So again, that's breakpoints, and you can set breakpoints up anywhere in your code and see what they're doing. Often if there's an error some spots, you can set up breakpoint and kind of look at the local variables around that spot. Last thing I'd say is, if you do run into an error and you don't know what it is, I would search Google, particularly look for postings, recent postings on Stack Overflow for that. Often you can paste in, or you can type in the exact error or part of the exact error. You've got to be careful with error messages that you don't include stuff that's particular to your project. So you don't want to have your own method names or your own variable names in the error message you search for. You know, if you can find a 3 or 4 word phrase that identifies the error. And I usually Google, I'm in Android, so I often Google Android, and then in quotes the 3 or 4 words that define the error, and then look for that. You have to watch with Google that you're getting recent errors. Especially with Android, anything more than 2 years old is probably not very useful, or it depends on the error, but be careful with older messages. Android Studio itself has only been around for 2 years. Before that, they used Eclipse and stuff like that. So try to look, and you can now filter on Google for like postings in the last year, which is sometimes useful. Hopefully that'll help you do some of your debugging.